What's up, guys? So this is going to be the video for puzzle 15. If you've seen the previous videos, you know that we did the puzzles for 2 and 1, which is basically 21. The left side was in Los Angeles for the 2, the right side was in New York for the 1, which put together make 21. Well, we're going to be using the same technique and the same strategy that we used in that one, except we're going to reverse it this time to find the clues that we need for the 15 and 16 puzzle. So I pulled up the Handimanticore page here just so you can look at it once more time. There is no widget screw A113, B figure 27. Well, this time we're going to be looking for in section A, Los Angeles. We're going to be looking for things that have 2 pictures and how many there are. There won't be 7. There's going to be 2 sets of pictures, the photograph pictures, and there are only 3 left for the photograph pictures on the left side, but there are 12 drawn pictures for the left side, and the 12 drawn pictures are what we're going to focus on. And then for New York, we're going to be using the same technique, 113, meaning pictures that have either 1 or 3 pictures for them, regardless of if they're drawn or photographed. So that's going to be our strategy that we're going to be using, and we're going to get started now. Let's see what we can find. So for puzzle 15, there are going to be 12 clues, so I'll try and be brief when going through the descriptions and stuff to try and make this go as quickly as possible. The first one is the West Ghost, which is a play off of the West Coast, and underneath it says Narcissus Pacifist, which means the peaceful narcissist. The one name that kind of stands out is going to be Ken Casey, and if you want to look up who Ken Casey is or was, he wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which won Best Picture, and he also graduated from Stanford University, which is a place where Byron Price actually graduated from as well. And also Ken Casey was involved in a CIA investigation into hallucinogenic drugs, and he wasn't even aware of that, but that's something that happened to him, and that's what he did. So in this clue right here, they're going to talk about things like Catalina from Vancouver to Oregon and a bunch of different places. They also talk about Disneyland in here. Everybody's been to Disneyland, so that puts you in Southern California. But if we look at the pictures here, we're going to see some weird, strange looking things in these pictures. For those of you who want to know a little bit more, I would suggest looking at the hands, but that's all I'm going to say. And if we look at the picture here, we're going to see a ghost just kind of coming out of a hot tub right here. The answer for this clue is actually in the habits area right above history. He talks about phone number of a studio exec over at Fox. And if we were to look at the picture here, you could see that they have these lights coming up, these spotlights, and that's very reminiscent of what Fox Studios does. So interesting he would say that. But the answer for this clue is going to be Fox Studio. And that's going to be located just south of Beverly Hills. So what we'll do is we'll bookmark 20th Century Fox and we will move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the backyard barbecue. Basically the backyard barbecue, and underneath it the term conflagratio suburbia basically means suburban wildfire. And if you look down here, you can see some people just kind of waving their arms. They look like satyrs or whatever you want to call them. The picture right here, it looks like a man barbecuing, and either his food or his apron or something is caught on fire. So sounds like we're looking for something that has to do with barbecue. There's not a lot of information in this clue except for the fact that we are cooking food. But after doing some research, one place will come up that stands out more than the others, and that place is Gus's world famous fried chicken. There are many reasons why this is the right place, but the one thing I will point out about this restaurant that's important, how we started over 60 years ago in the small community of Mason, Tennessee. That's where they got started. So I'm not going to go too much more into detail on this one, but the answer here is Gus's world famous fried chicken. So we'll bookmark this and we'll move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the stylus devil. And underneath it, it says Diablo Repita de Groove. Basically, that means repeated devil groove. So, repeated devil groove. If we look at the pictures here, we can see what appears to be an old record player right here. It's a record set. And this stylus devil has a pitchfork or a triton, and he's just kind of going to mess with it. If we looked at the other picture right here, you can see that the stylus devil has actually crunched the needle on the record, and it's scratching the record there. But the only things that really come to mind here for things you can research, we have Thomas Alva Edison's laboratory in New Jersey. That might come in handy a little later. And Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you guys were young growing up in the 80s, you guys probably watched this show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But it appears right here that we're talking about music, we're talking about records, and if you guys know anything about LA, there's only one place that really stands out when you're talking about a record in terms of a building, and that is the Capitol Records building. If you were to look on top, it's actually got a record on top and it's got the needle up there. I'm not going to go too much more into detail about this because Capitol Records and then a record player. So Capitol Records is what we'll be looking for. We're going to bookmark this and we're going to move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the mind boggles. And underneath it, it says Videoticus Nielsonian. And basically that means the Nielsen ratings. And if you want to know more about the Nielsen ratings, it's basically a media research company that measures media audiences, including television, radio, theater, and films. They're headquartered out in New York, but having Los Angeles here, you know that a lot of movies and films are based out here. So, of course, whatever place this is going to be using the Nielsen ratings to see how popular a show or film or anything is. And if you want to look at the pictures, here's a picture of a mind-boggler hand coming out of an old television set with the twist-turn knobs. Thank God that's outdated. But it says an Ohio mind-boggle here. Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. If you want to look closer at the hand, maybe you can see the 3 that we pointed out previously. 3. And then also, we're looking at a mind-boggler here, and he's just working his magic on this guy who's vegged out watching the boob tube, as they would call it. So we're looking for something that has to do with television and recordings, and there's only one place that I could think of, and if you're from LA, you know this place, Television City. It's right above the Grove, and this is where CBS is headquartered, and they film a lot of shows here. You can watch a couple of free shows if you're ever in the area. Just look it up online. But Television City, this is what we're going to be looking for. So we're going to bookmark it and we're going to move on. Next fair person clue we're going to be looking at is the sophomore jinx, similar to the sophomore slump. The line underneath it, Gaudiamus ignoris, basically means let us rejoice in ignorance. And some of the things they talk about here are what sounds like campus activities at a school. They mention John Belushi, who was really famous for the movie Animal House. Also, they talk about F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote The Great Gatsby, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. Also, F. Scott Fitzgerald was good friends with Ernest Hemingway, and he also wrote for the Saturday Evening Post, the New York Post. So a little bit of a connection there. And then they talk about colleges, universities, graduates, and whatnot. So the theme here is going to be schools. And you can see right here, this guy is eating a goldfish. And you can see inside here, it looks like the sophomore jinx is just hanging out in some dude's room. That's a mess. So we're looking for something that has to do with schools. And there's only a couple of really big name schools in Southern California that have national attention. But the big school obviously is going to be USC, which is the University of Southern California. Originally part of the Pac-12, now it's part of the Big Ten. And this is right around where the LA Memorial Coliseum is. The Trojans play here, and this is their home stadium right here. But for this clue, the answer is going to be the University of Southern California. So we're going to bookmark this and move on. Next clue we're going to be talking about is Elvis Presley, knockoff of Elvis Presley. And the line underneath it, Grillis Marcus, that doesn't really mean anything in particular. That's actually an author, and that author was Greil Marcus. And he was an American author, music journalist, and cultural critic, notable for producing scholarly and literary essays that place rock music in a broader framework of culture and politics. So it sounds like we're looking for something that has to do with music. And you can see here there is a rock and roll pin right here, and underneath it we got Elvis Presley throwing up these pins in the air. Wonder what that looks like. But you can see he's got a bunch of warts and other stuff on his face. He looks like a hippie. He's got the hippie cross on it, party animal, maybe part of the animal house. But yeah, this is going to be a music clue right here. Some of the people that he talks about in here are uh, Peggy Lee, the Grassroots, Tom Jones. He also talks real briefly about the Phantom of the Opera, which is the second time we've seen this, and Phil Spector. He's got an interesting story if you want to look him up. Also, he talks about a music track right here, Disco Inferno by the Tramps. If you want to listen to it, go for it. But what we're going to be looking for is something that has to do with music. And after a good search, one place in particular stood out, and that is going to be the Hollywood Bowl. This is a place where a lot of performances are held every summer when this place opened. It has outdoor seating, and in the clue it talks about festival seatings, open air concerts without rain dates. So this is a place that has nothing but outdoor seating. Also, I believe this was where the LA Philharmonic Orchestra played. Occasionally, this might have been one of their early home bases, so something to do with that. Also, if you want to look at Elvis Presley's head, you can kind of see that it is similar match for the design of the Hollywood Bowl right here. If you want to look closer at it, you can go for it, but what we're going to do is we're going to bookmark the Hollywood Bowl and we're going to move on. So the next fair person clue we're going to talk about is Damon Runyon. And the line underneath, septem adeste undecim, means 7 to 11. This doesn't have to do with the convenience store 7-Eleven, so don't worry about that. But when I first saw the headliner Damon Runyon, the first thing I thought about was Runyon Canyon. And you can see Runyon Canyon is right here by the Hollywood Hills, and it's a very famous place where a lot of people go hiking. Got a lot of trails, easy to go through. So that's what I thought it was originally, but the clues in this don't exactly lead to the Runyon Canyon. I just wanted to tell you what Damon Runyon was about, and that's actually a person. That person's name was Alfred Damon Runyon, and this guy was a newspaper writer, but he was also an author of many short stories and plays. He came up with tales usually that were funny about gamblers, hustlers, actors, and gangsters. They all had really colorful names. I'm sure you heard of people like Nathan Detroit, Big Jules, Harry the Horse, Dave the Dude, Apple Annie, Good Time Charlie. So you probably heard of a couple of his movies or stories like Guys and Dolls, real popular. One of his movies was Little Miss Marker, and that was the first film that Shirley Temple starred in. So he had to do with Shirley Temple's career. And a very famous director who I admire, a guy named Frank Capra, actually made one of Damon Runyon's plays. It was called Lady for a Day, and it was actually remade into a movie called Pocket Full of Miracles in the 60s. So if you want to take a look at some of the works by Damon Runyon, he definitely had some good ones. And he worked for a newspaper in Colorado and across the U.S. He worked for the New York Evening Post for a little bit as well. But they actually give out a Damon Runyon Award once a year to great journalists. So we might see that a little later. But just wanted to give you a little background on that. Now, some of the people that are talked about in the clue are General Custer, who fought with the Sioux, and everybody knows that he got slaughtered there. They talk about what seems to be gambling. They mentioned the Sands Hotel in Vegas. Jersey has the Sands too, I believe, and it's all gambling area. He talks about horse racing in here, and he also talks about the LA Lakers. And of course, like most of these clues, he's giving a shout out to Columbus. So we've talked a little bit about those people before. What we're looking for is something that has to do with, sounds like gambling with cards, horse racing, and the LA Lakers. And if you know anything about LA, there's one spot in particular that's going to stand out. And if we were to pull up a map of South LA in Inglewood in color, you're going to see the Kia Forum, or what is now the Kia Forum. That's where the LA Lakers used to play back in the 80s before Staples Center or Crypto Arena opened. You have the Hollywood Park Casino, which has been around for a very long time. And there used to be a racetrack right here. Where SoFi Stadium is currently. This is the home of the Los Angeles Rams, won the Super Bowl a couple years back, and they won it on their home field, which was real cool. But Hollywood Park, that was the name of the racetrack here, the Hollywood Park Racetrack. And considering that it has all the things that we're looking for, a racetrack, a casino, and the LA Lakers Stadium, this is the point that we're going to use, the Hollywood Park Racetrack. The next fair person clue we're going to be talking about is the Elf Alpha, and underneath it, it says Dieticitus Insanius, which means an insane diet. You're going to be reading about things in here like Johnny Appleseed right here in history. Johnny Appleseed planted a lot of apples in apple orchards. You can read about him if you'd like. He also talks about Buddha camps, Slimnasiums, vegetarians, and a whole bunch of other places to eat supposedly good food, but obviously it doesn't always taste that great. He's talking about Flintstones, one-a-day vitamins. So we're talking about health, but Flintstones, obviously a Hanna-Barbera creation. We talk about Hanna-Barbera a few times in here. So we're looking for something that has to do with good food, or healthy food at least. You can see here the alfalfa is in a spoon, and hopefully nobody eats him. And here you have a picture of the alfalfa contemplating the stars above, whether that's Jupiter or Saturn with the rings, who knows. But you can see he's got yogurt, a yogurt stand, brown rice flavor. I don't know who would want to eat brown rice flavored yogurt, but that's the clue that we got. So we're obviously looking for somebody that's a health person. And you can read here, they talk about bat guano and parsnip juice and stuff like that. Stuff sounds pretty disgusting, but if you were around in the 80s and thinking about who's the most healthiest person, always talking about fitness, there's one person in particular that probably comes to mind, and unfortunately he just passed away, but his name was Richard Simmons. This guy was also known as Slimmons, and he had Weight Watch shows, aerobic videos. He had a gym which was in Beverly Hills, and this guy was around for a while. He always talked about health, talked about fitness, and he was just a guy that always preached that kind of stuff. His location for his studio is actually located in Beverly Hills. Unfortunately, it's permanently closed. But if you were to take a look at the picture of what the front door looks like, you can see that it bears a little bit of a resemblance to this door right here. So this is where Richard Simmons' studio used to be. This is going to be the answer for our next clue right here, the Richard Simmons studio. So we're going to bookmark that and we're going to move on. The next fair person clue we're going to be talking about is kinderguardians, and underneath it, it says Lusos Angeli, which means sport of the angels. Kinderguardians, kindergarten. So you're thinking about something that has to do with a young child or something that's very young. This was probably the last clue that I solved. It took the knowledge of what I know about the puzzles and a number being embedded and how they're similar to the 12 puzzles previously for me to actually find the location for this one. And I would rather have done this last, but since we're going in order, I'm going to share it with you now. Now, first in the clue, it talks about things like the Grimm brothers, who we've kind of talked about earlier. They wrote all the fairy tales early on. They also talk about certain people like Huck Finn from Mark Twain, who we've talked about previously. They guided Huck Finn's raft down the river, so that's what we were looking for in San Francisco. And he also talks about Billy the Kid, who was a famous outlaw early on, and he died early. He got shot and he got killed. So we're looking for something that has to do with young adolescents in a sense. Now, for the longest time, I believe that this was more of a reference for LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, because these guys are the ones protecting the city. They're the ones driving around trying to stop crime and everything. But when you try to make your number later on, this clue did not fit the LAPD, even though it kind of sounded like it could be. It wasn't that. Eventually, I came to find a location and it fit the bill much better. And that location is the location is actually a park. And the park here is Lafayette Park, which is right off of Wilshire and Hoover, or in between 6th and Commonwealth and Lafayette Park. Now, again, we have another reference for Lafayette, and we know who Lafayette was. We spoke about him several times. And there's also a location here called the Philippe de Neve Library Branch. I'm sure a lot of people have never heard of Philippe de Neve, but he was actually a very important person. If you want to read a little bit about him, he was a Spanish soldier who served as the 4th governor of the Californias from 1775 to 1782. Neve is one of the founders of Los Angeles and was instrumental in the foundation of San Jose and Santa Barbara. So you have a guy right here who founded Los Angeles. So he was there for Los Angeles in its infancy when it was very young. And also you have a reference to Lafayette, Gilbert the Marquis de Lafayette, who was here for America in their time of need during the American Revolution and helped America, the United States of America, become a country and win the revolution against the British. So two people who helped a young country, a young city turn into what it is today. These two gentlemen had a lot to do with that. Also, if we want to look at the pictures down here, you can see this kindergarten protecting a boy and his dog walking across the street. Gotta love dogs, no doubt about that. But also this picture right here of this kindergarten putting out a flame on something that this kid is going to light on fire. He's got some explosives and some dynamite, so probably dynamite. But if you were to look up Philippe de Neve, his picture, he's got this statue here in Los Angeles Plaza, and you can see a striking resemblance to this statue right here and this little child right here. So the next answer for the clue is going to be this park right here, the Philippe de Neve Branch Library in Lafayette Park. That's going to be the answer. So we'll bookmark this and we will move on. Next fair person clue we're going to talk about is the Leprechaun Man, and this is short for con man. The saying underneath, melancholia extremis, means just what it sounds like, extreme melancholy, extreme sadness. So we're looking for things that have to do with sadness, and we could see that this Leprechaun Man right here, he's pouring a bottle into what appears to be a shot glass. So sometimes, when you're sad, sometimes you just need a drink and it helps you relax. Some people take it to the extreme, though, and they drink a lot more than they should. You can see here the Leprechaun Man is helping out this guy who's feeling a little down and blue by filling up his drink to the brim. A couple of notable people who are talked about in here are F. Scott Fitzgerald and Eugene O'Neill. We know that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby and some other famous stories, but this guy was also a hardcore alcoholic. He drank a lot. Maybe his relationship with his fiancée Zelda had something to do with that. Also, Eugene O'Neill, he was a bit of an alcoholic. He wrote a lot of good books, including The Last Voyage Home, which starred John Wayne, and John Ford directed it when they converted it into a movie. Also, Eugene O'Neill, his youngest daughter, Una, married Charlie Chaplin, and he disowned her after that. So a little bit of history about those guys. But what it looks like we're looking for in this picture is a place where you can drink. And if you're Irish, I'm 1% Irish, so I could say that there's whiskey, probably whiskey. Irish whiskey is the thing. And there's actually a place for whiskey in LA, and that place is called Whiskey A Go Go. And this place has been around for a very long time. Um, if you want to take a look on the outside, they got a lot of famous vans that come and play. But the Whiskey A Go Go, this is a place where you can get a drink, listen to music, and kind of wipe your sorrows away with the drink. So this is going to be the answer to our next clue. We're going to bookmark this and move on. The next fair person clue we're going to talk about is Don Fawn, and that's short for Don Juan, who's a very charming person with the women in Italy. If you want to read about him, you can look him up. The line underneath it, Veni, Vidi, Visa, means I came, I saw, I stayed, and that's just a play on words for Veni, Vidi, Vici, which is something that Julius Caesar once said. I came, I saw, I conquered. This clue has a lot to do with what it sounds like some kind of illegal immigration. Uh, Obviously, we just had a presidential election and President Trump won. One of his big talking points was illegal immigration and trying to fix it. So, even in this book, they're kind of talking about a little bit of illegal immigration. But as this book kind of focuses on immigration and how people came to America, we're not going to talk about that. One of the things that he mentions here is William Seward. If you know about William Seward, he was the Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln, and he was very responsible for the Alaska purchase from Russia. So the reason we have Alaska as the 50th state is because William Seward helped purchase it. They do talk about some other places which won't really help us here, but after reading this, it took a little bit to figure this one out. Here in the picture, you can see this Don Fawn hopping across the border, talking about helps fill up the melting pot. And in this picture right here, you could see Don Fawn just kind of distracting the guards while these two gentlemen kind of cross over. And it says the U.S.-Mexico border guard station here. You're not going to find anything about the U.S.-Mexico border in this clue. It did take a little bit, but eventually I found a location that fit pretty well. And that location is the Hollywood Heritage Museum. Obviously, heritage has to do with where you come from. So obviously they're talking about immigrants coming. They all remember where they came from, but they're bringing their way of life to here in America. So that kind of is what made this a good choice. Also, if we were to put boots on the ground, we can see that the side of the Hollywood Heritage Museum is fairly similar to right here, where you have the police cars and the immigration looking at Don Fawn while these guys cross in. A little bit of information about the Hollywood Heritage Museum is it wasn't here when Byron Price would have done this book. It was acquired in 1983 and it opened in 1985, basically. But this place, this barn right here, as it was called, was the Lasky DeMille barn. And this is where they started making movies. Obviously, Cecil B. DeMille and this guy Lasky, very famous people. You can look them up if you'd like. But these guys were kind of the pioneers in the silent film era. So this right here kind of talks about heritage. Well, if we're in a movie city like Los Angeles, this is the heritage of Los Angeles, Hollywood. This is where films were made during the early years by Lasky and DeMille. So we're going to bookmark this point and we're going to move on. So the last fair person clue we're going to be talking about in this Los Angeles set is going to be Tupper werewolves. And that's just play on words for werewolves and Tupperware. They just combine the word. And tedium domesticum means basically domestic boredom. So they don't give us a lot of things that we can look into. You know, they talk a little bit about the American Indians. They talk about China. And they talk about a lot of different places, but not really any people in particular. They do talk about in the spotters tips about people who had recent surgery and people who survived head-on collisions with commuter trains. These people do not shatter at extreme temperatures. So we're thinking about something that's not real, something that's plastic, and something that has to do with surgery. And if you just recognize what those two words were, plastic surgery, you'll probably get an idea for one place in particular, most likely in the 80s, because it was only specialized in a certain area for the wealthy. But as time has come to now, the more modern era, we know that plastic surgery is something that can be done anywhere. But early on, the city of Beverly Hills was a place where very wealthy people had a lot of money and they were able to get plastic surgery done. So a lot of people who live in Beverly Hills, they don't need to work, so obviously they get bored and they want to look good, so they have plastic surgery. And they talk about shopping centers there, Rodeo Drive, and yeah. So here we're going to be looking at the city of Beverly Hills. This is one of the few times where we're going to be using an actual city instead of a specific building or location. But Beverly Hills, the city, is going to be the answer to our next clue. So we're going to bookmark it. And now we're going to go and connect the dots and see what we can find. So as you can see on the map, I've bookmarked the locations. I've used blue dots this time just to distinguish them from the last ones because we'll still be using those for another reason later. But if I pull this up in Paint and I connected the dots, let's see what we can find. So through the magic of television, once again, we've connected the dots, and we can see here that we have what looks to be a 1 and a 5, 15. And if we were to pull up another picture similar to that one and the Chicago puzzle, we can see that even though it's not 100% spot on, it's very similar. And we have a 5 that goes up, over, down, and around, and very similar. Here it's just more pointed. Could have curved it out, but I decided to use straight lines instead. So here we are. We have puzzle 15 completed, and what we'll do now is we'll move on to puzzle 16 in New York. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.